test sound for Zoom. Was that, you hear me now? I'll turn my microphone on. Okay, let me try that again. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to call to order the regular meeting of Council on July 19th at 4 p.m. Council would like to acknowledge the Yukluwa thought on whose traditional territories the District of Yukluwa operates, and notice a video recording. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Any late items? Okay, looking for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. And looking for adoption of the minutes from June 29th.
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. Public input. This is an opportunity for members of the public to provide input. Speakers will have 2 minutes to present unless council votes unanimously, I love saying that one, to extend speakers' time. Please note that this is not a question and answer period, and council is under no obligation to enter into a debate of any issue. That said, we are more than happy to receive your comments. We ask that all speakers state their name, address, and the topic. If you're attending via Zoom, please raise your hand icon to speak, and if you're attending by telephone, hit *9. Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak? Just up to the podium. Yes, please. I said that right here.
Hi, Jenny
Welcome.
Sheeline, 1594 Bay Street, Ucluelet. And I'm not sure if this is the time that I should speak, so I'm wanting to talk about the committee of the whole, that bylaw change. Is this the time that I should speak
We're going
about
to be getting that to a little bit later on.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, like from the agenda, if I should speak now or then.
Did you want to make a couple comments? Go ahead.
If I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I've been a long-time resident of Ucluelet, been here 27 years, seen a lot of changes over the years. I was the manager for Jamie's Whaling Station for 15 years, 2003 till 2018. I witnessed the change in tourism over the years from very little to a lot, and people coming from the Netherlands, Germany, wherever, but they all expressed to me when I asked them what drew them to Ucluelet, they didn't want to be like Tofino. They liked the ambiance of Ucluelet, the small town flavor, and the friendliness of our people. And I'm just, and I speak on behalf of a lot of people my age who don't have the nerve to come and get up and talk, and I'm kind of nervous as well. But I think that there is a time for a change as far as the B&Bs and tourism accommodations in Ucluelet. The co-op's overwhelmed, the parking's overwhelmed, the staffing of all the businesses in town is overwhelmed because there's no accommodations, there's no places for people to stay. And I was in support of the presentation on June 28th. I came back from Alberta and watched it on Zoom. And so I'm just in support of changes to B&Bs, Airbnbs, small dwellings, or whatever. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Appreciate it. Are there any other audience members that'd like to make any comments? Or have any questions?
Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha Hackett. I'm actually a Tofino resident, but I'm here on behalf of the West Coast Multiplex Society and on behalf of our group of dedicated West Coast locals, both from Ucluelet, Tofino, and all of the surrounding First Nations communities, all volunteers. And just in regards to 11.1, I'll be here if you do have any questions during that discussion or after, but really just, you know all the details. I'm not going to spend the whole 2 minutes going over all the history and everything. And because we recently got to talk at the Committee of the Whole meeting, really just the question is, and if you need anything from me of what you need from us, the society, to be able to sign the MOU, and just please let us know, and look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for the support, and thanks for putting it on the agenda.
Any other members of the audience who wish to speak? No? Okay, we'll move on to, are there any members of the public via Zoom or telephone?
No members of the public have their hand raised in Zoom at this time.
And have we received any emails to community input?
Just refreshing my browser. Not at this time.
Okay. Moving on to delegations, we have one delegation this afternoon. Please keep your presentations 10 minutes. This time is limit. It may be extended by council resolution. Members of the council may ask questions at the end of the presentation. Along, council will not be making any decisions at this time. So I wish to welcome Gary Marks of the Pacific Rim Foundation. Yeah, we'll wait, it's all good. It's a nice sunny day. Yeah, 100%. To those listening by Zoom, we're just waiting for our special guest to show up, so it'll probably be another few more minutes.
Am I on? Okay. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for welcoming the delegation from the Pacific Rim Foundation. My name is Gary Marks. I'm the president of said foundation. For the 14th year, we meet before our local village's governmental body to mark the significance and share in celebrating our children's accomplishments. We congratulate all of this year's applicants and acknowledge that each of them have demonstrated a desire to live a life of purpose and make a difference in the world. I can tell you confidentially that the selection committee had a very difficult time and felt that all of them were worthy of a scholarship. As we all know, the most important ingredient in a community is the people who live there and how we treat one another. In the words of Wendell Berry, we are all participants in the town's conversation about itself. And so it was that Dick Close, who did so much for the community, including setting up this scholarship program, with the express purpose of assisting a graduating Ucluelet secondary student whose personal goals and public contributions were informed by a larger sense of community. Dick stipulated that it would be an expression of support for the local school and that it would encourage families to stay in our communities, housing provided, knowing this sort of opportunity was available on the West Coast. Dick's leadership in this effort was a reflection of his generosity. Central to the scholarship was the idea that the recipient would be a person who was invested in making the world a better place through a life lived with purpose. Dick believed in lifelong learning, and he believed in young people. This scholarship would celebrate the idea of service to others. Dick's gift allows our young people to dream and to imagine greater possibilities and fulfilled lives. His magnanimous gesture not only encourages the young people of our communities to volunteer and be positively engaged, but it also motivates ordinary people to do good things. Once again, we see the unconditional love and support that parents, teachers, and community give to our children. These young adults are a reflection of us, after all, and their hard work and earnest efforts are a tribute to the best of us, in all of us. All Tofinoans and Euclusians can be proud of these young citizens. The Foundation awards the student who has excelled with their involvement in their respective communities and their engagement in the world. In this, our 14th presentation of the scholarship, we celebrate their volunteerism and contributions to others and their determination to make a difference in the world that seems to have gone topsy-turvy and is faced with increasing and greater challenges. To paraphrase Ralph Abernathy, we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. Little emotion here. So, it is with enormous pleasure that I present the 2022 Dick Close Scholarship recipient, Pani Ayubazada. I got more. Hold on, Pani. I've got a little more here. Pani's extraordinary journey begins in Iran with a mother and father who placed a high value on education. Their daughter embraced this guidance as she accumulated many academic awards and was motivated by constant goals of self-improvement and selfless service in her communities. After completing her elementary programs in Iran, her family made the decision to immigrate. The first country that comes to mind when considering a place where everyone has an equal and fair chance to thrive is Canada, says Pani. Pani goes on to say that she will never forget the welcoming teachers at USS who introduced her to many fantastic opportunities. Pani exemplifies the very principle of volunteerism. In both big and small ways, she has found the means to help where she can and give willingly of her time and efforts. Pani says, "Being in service to others has always been important to me. When I help others, I am contributing to building a positive environment and a stronger community." Pani's involvement in a wide range of activities is a clear demonstration of her innate curiosity. She has been a member of the BC Youth Parliament, the first student from the West Coast to earn a seat and become the parliamentary secretary. This position was accompanied by a great many responsibilities and duties, which she has and continues to fulfill admirably. Of particular note is Pani's fundraising for Camp Phoenix, tutoring young students who, for social or financial reasons, would otherwise be unable to attend the camp. Pani has participated in a variety of other fundraising activities sponsored by the BC Youth Parliament. She has been an active member of Surfrider Youth Club, becoming the treasurer and taking on numerous responsibilities that raise awareness of the need to care for the environment and employ sustainable practices and environmental responsibilities. Pani realizes the importance of physical well-being and was a member of the cross-country team. She has been learning to play the santur, a interesting, it's a hammer dulcimer, if I'm correct. Yes. She also was a member of the Junior Achievers, where her team developed a beeswax wrap business. As you can see from this just partial list of her many accomplishments and activities, Pani has learned to manage her time and understand the value of collaboration, open-mindedness, and flexibility. She has also learned the value of teamwork and developed prodigious communication, interpersonal, and problem-solving skills. And she possesses wisdom, too. In Pani's words, home is not simply where you were born, but it is a place where you step out of your comfort zone and pursue your passions with purpose. Pani has been accepted to the UBC undergraduate science program. Her goal of becoming a cardiac thoracic surgeon, and I think we can all agree, is well within her reach. We are here today to recognize Pani's dreams and ambitions and offer her our support and encouragement of her family, her friends, and her community. Pani says, "I am an Iranian girl with great ambitions that have grown as I have grown and have given me strong willpower and the motivation to work hard and succeed. Pani is blessed with great character. She is humble and thus worthy of our praise for all of her accomplishments in her 17 years. And today, she begins her 18th year. So happy birthday to you, Pani." Ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud to present the 2022 Dick Close Scholarship recipient, Pani Ayubazadeh. And I invite her up to say a few words.
Hello, I hope everyone are doing well. First of all, I want to thank everyone on West Coast who have always supported me from the first day that I arrived here. I am very blessed for being in such a supportive community with so many kind people that have always been there for me. Thanks to my mom and dad for bringing me here and giving me the opportunity to be in such a great place with so many lovely people. Thank you so much. And I also want to express my gratitude to all the USS teachers, especially Miss Thompson, for always being there for me. Thank you so much. And a special thanks to the Close Scholarship for providing me with this generous scholarship that will give me the opportunity to pursue my dreams and hopefully one day become a cardiac surgeon. And I'm very, very blessed. It's very exciting to be the first immigrant recipient of the Close Scholarship. And I really hope that all the other immigrant students like me step out of their comfort zone and get involved in their communities. As just was said, I really believe that home is not just where you were born, but it's the place you step out of your comfort zone and get out and get involved in the things that interests you and meet all the friendly people that are around you. So I'm really thankful for that, and I hope that I can pay off all these support with my hard work. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
You done with me?
Yeah, wonderful. And thanks again, and a big
You guys, I mean, we'd come down often because USS is where it's at.
Right.
it is.
That's right.
Congratulations from the entire
Thank
community.
you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you.
Come and sign your life.
Take care, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All the best, you guys.
Well done, Nikki.
Okay, we're good? Any unfinished business? Thanks, Sam. Okay, we have one committee of the whole report today. May I have a motion to enter into the committee of the whole?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay. Was, okay. I believe, Mr. Gregg, you're going to start this conversation for us?
Through the chair, certainly. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay. So on June 29th, Council sort of sent direction to staff to make some changes to the bylaws that were being considered in the discussion of residential zoning and short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts, and refer that bylaw back to the committee of the whole meeting. And this is a bit of a interim step of really having a discussion or allowing discussion of to get some further sort of clarity and direction on some of the goals and options before we start drafting bylaws and putting pen to paper. And we had also seen there were some questions. So I've got just a couple of slides to go through here. There we are. To clarify a couple of things, because I'll start with there was some discussion on. First of all, let's be clear about some terms. What are we talking about? Because there's what is a short-term rental versus a bed and breakfast. So for clarity, we think we'll use sort of two terms, because the short-term rental sometimes gets confusing, because there's also what are in tourist commercial zones, and there's all kinds of varieties of short-term rentals, including hotels and motels. So we won't use that term. But the B&B, or bed and breakfast, is kind of the traditional bedroom within a house, if you will. We'll use that term to refer to using the main entrance to the home. So it could be a spare bedroom down the hallway, and there's generally a high level of interaction between the guest and the owner in that kind of a setting that was kind of traditionally the B&B. And there was some discussion in the public hearing and the council comments after about really sort of maybe there's a differentiation between that type of use and what we're calling a guest suite, which is the vacation rental suite that's attached to a home, to a single family home, but may not have the same characteristics. So these typically, and we're seeing them having a private exterior entrance, and really then limited or no interaction between the owner and the guest. Often, that it's really a code access for a guest approaching. And so that's sort of what we're sort of meaning, and some possibility of differentiating between the two within the regulations, if there's a desire to treat those two somewhat differently. So where currently those would all sort of be lumped under what is the bed and breakfast use in our zoning. So also there's some question about what are we seeing and how are things changing, and what we're seeing through construction under in construction and business licensing, that we're seeing traditionally B&Bs. I don't know if my pointer sort of shows up here. This is a floor plan that we grabbed, where the bedrooms are sort of down the hall from the old master bedroom. Like they have a continuous, hallway. It's all sort of within the house, and so they have some rooms that were identified as a B&B. So this would be a typical older plan shown for what was a business license for a bed and breakfast. And what we're seeing more as the sort of guest suite is new construction, and new applications are coming in where, we have a house where the main house kind of wraps beside and underneath. This is a sloped site. The entrance is sort of up above. And then you have these three separate B&B suites that are part of the house, meet the definitions of our older current zoning bylaw, but really they're self-contained and have an exterior entrance and door, and they're really, you can, I think from the inside they have all the features of like a hotel or motel suite. And there's one question around why 3? Why is the magic number 3? And that's a bit historic, I think, that many of the bed and breakfasts really around the time of Expo 86, there was a bit of a push around having the tourism draw of the International Exposition sort of spread out throughout the province, and many municipalities were adding bed and breakfast into their zoning as sort of a secondary use around that time. And I believe the reason why they seem to all speak to up to three, maximum of 3 rooms, had to do with fire code. And up to 3 rooms, it was really a room down the hallway. If there's an emergency, the owner can, run down the hallway and get people up and get them out the door. The fire code for more than 3 units kicked in where it was more like a hotel, where exit signs and plans had to change for that. So most zoning refers to sort of the bed and breakfast of 3 rooms or less. And so that's just, that was one of the questions that came up. And it really has been on the books as up to a maximum of 3, but that's somewhat just kind of the history of how that kind of came to be, that standard, if you will. And so here's another example of what we're seeing. This is an example from a current application where the owner is a Vancouver-based company that has made the application for. Again, it's an R1 single-family zoning. So this would be a single-family dwelling with 3 B&B rooms, where the house has sort of 2 floors of the main house, or about 950 square feet. It appears that one may be a lock-off suite and the other sort of a separate sort of main dwelling, but regardless of the details, that's sort of the main house. And then there are 3, again, purpose-built B&B room suites that are attached with exterior entrances. So it's all attached as one structure, but really functions as separate from the main home. And in this, you could see this sort of down below here are the 5 parking spaces that would be backing out onto the street. So sort of they have to have parking for all of those units, and so it's really parking sort of lined up along the front. And these are some of the plans that we're seeing for new construction, for the new builds. And there was a question. Okay, sorry. There was so this is fairly typical of what we're seeing in new builds and new construction. There was a question around who is applying, and so these 3, you've seen this graph before. This was sort of the new applications of what's come in this year. So currently we have about 68, and it's now up to about 70 new business license applications. Of those, it's very hard to pull out because the information on building permits and business licenses and residential information in our tax data is all in 3 separate places. But what we can say is, like, out of this current snapshot of applications this year, about half are Ucluelet residents and about half are non-residents. So that gives us some indication of sort of what we're seeing in applications. And interestingly, of those of the Ucluelet residents, mostly those are for 1 unit, and for non-residents, it's the majority of them are 2 or 3 units. So there does seem to be a little difference in how the use is being, I guess, sought. So so that was just sort of answering some of the questions that have arisen, and we, in the report that's in front of you, had kind of tried to tease out some points for discussion on clarifying what are some of the goals. I mean, there's 5 areas here of sort of questions where sort of clarifying, are we on track, or to see what are the goals, and then some potential actions. Some of them may be contradictory, but sort of if we take them individually, I think a discussion on each of these and what the merits are might be helpful for us to have some direction of how do we go back to the drawing board with some bylaw changes. So if there's any questions that come out of these, this is, I think, the first one here. I think it's on page 16 of the agenda. These are the same sort of questions that are prompted there, but I'll just leave these on the screen and leave it there for now.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Are there any questions so far for Mr. Gregg? And there are going to be some questions for all of us. I think everyone's done their homework. So do you want to dive into this?
Absolutely. This is a chance, I think, as a committee, the whole discussion, to have a discussion, maybe just take them one by one. We tried to tease out, what might be the tools. Is it a business license or a zoning bylaw change? But really starting with what's the desired direction so that we can start putting pen to paper on some of these. And is there support for us pursuing these as some of the various options that may work together or in isolation, but you could almost sort of take it one by one and have some discussion and indication of what the desired direction is.
Okay, well, starting with Goal A. Does anybody have any comments regarding Goal A, preserve traditional B&B use in residential areas and consider ways to slow or contain guest suite uses in residential areas? Someone want to go ahead?
I would like to pursue that. I've actually got a question. And I mean, not that I'm averse to pursuing this, don't get me wrong there. But when we were discussing back in November the slowish growth rate, we were talking about sort of a ballpark kind of maximum number of short-term rentals in the town. What was that number? I don't remember, and I didn't find it in my short time looking.
I can pull up the slide, but that lowish growth scenario looked at over the next 30 years, I think it was 352 additional tourist accommodation units. And that was total of all tourist accommodation,
Okay, so that was
regardless of whether it was a motel or hotel or a secondary or a bed and breakfast. That was the total number.
so 352 new. So not including the ones that were already licensed.
Not including the existing. So BlackRock or a B&B that's already established would already be counted. So we'd accounted for that. This was looking at growth over the next 30 years.
So between November and now, how many have we got? Additional. Sorry, I didn't ask you that question earlier.
I'm sorry, I'm pausing. I'm thinking because we have, of all the slides and the data that we've pulled together, can I flip to it quickly? No.
Sorry, I hate to put you on the spot like that. No, I was just wondering what percentage we had done in 6 months, basically, instead of 30 years.
Well, we saw
Rather,
since the beginning of the year, we have had 68 new applications for business licenses for bed and breakfasts, and that's applications for licenses, not total number of units. The average is 2.
yeah. So that's like, yeah, we're halfway there already in 6 months, not 30 years. That is a beyond exponential proliferation of these short-term rentals. It's frightening, actually. Thank you, Jenny, for speaking earlier, because I can't tell you how many people I've had a conversation with over the apples about this. They don't come and they don't speak and they don't write letters, but they will corner me for half an hour at a time for the last couple of weeks. That has been my life. It's the silent majority. It's the people that don't speak. I had a conversation with a guy from I'm just going to get on my high horse.
Is your mic on?
Yep. I had a conversation with a guy from our meat department, and I said, so I know you live in your camper out at Lost Shoe and have for a couple of years. And I said, what do you think about the short-term rental thing that's up? Because everybody's read the Westerly from last week. And he's like, well, you don't need to hear from me. I'm not a homeowner. And I'm like, but you need a place to live. He's like, well, I can't find a long-term residence. I'm like, so I need to hear what you think about this. He's like, well, I'm not the voice you need to hear. I'm like, yeah, you are, because you're the missing person. This is the thing. All these people who cannot find homes. And I'm like, I know that it's anecdotal, the number of lost places due to, rent eviction turned into B&Bs. I know of 2 within, 4 houses of my boyfriend's place. I know 2 within 4 houses of my place that used to be long-term rentals that are no longer long-term rentals. I know people that have left town because they can't find a place to live, and it's so frustrating. We can't hire at the co-op because there's nowhere to live. So I really think we need to be on this. We need to slow this growth, and we need to find a way to do it, and it's not easy. But Gary Marks said the most important element of a community is the people that live there. Well, if you can't find a place to live, then what kind of community do you have? And how do you maintain the quaintness of our little town if everywhere is a B&B or a short-term rental or a guest suite? Sorry, everywhere is a guest suite, because it's really, that's the issue. Monster buildings like the one that he threw up there, that's, we won't ever see it because it's designed so that it meets all the codes. So we don't have to see it for a variance or a development permit, and that makes me a little crazy. So I'm going to get off my high horse for now, but I'll probably get back on later.
No, that's right. It's important. Councillor Cole.
Whatever the name of that horse is going to screw up the order in which I thought I was going to say things. Because thank you to Councillor Hoare for pointing out that the difference that Mr. Gregg made to begin with in pointing out what is a traditional B&B, which is what a B&B is, which is what is already zoned, which if there's non-compliance or that has been twisted into something else, which it has been because we've seen that, then I don't think that is the responsibility of the people who are compliant or active or inactive in having a B&B done the right way. You can probably take those numbers about the slow growth, and you can factor in what has happened in this last weird times, these strange times, and you can factor in the notification that was given that it was going to go away and what happened then, and you can look at all those things, and you can take comfort in the fact that the great thing is that moving forward, we already know what the potential could be, and if we've already exceeded exponentially what we can over the next 30 years, the good news is we have the ability to not approve any more of these type of situations. We have the ability to govern and properly divvy out the ability for people to do it properly. And I'm 100%, as I was before, into preserving slow growth. And when you talk about what will maintain the quaintness, I will tell you, there's a whole bunch of people that, and they're also unspoken, and they're not sitting here because they are in their homes where they choose to be and have been for decades, and maybe will never exercise that right. But it doesn't mean that the onus is on them to fix our evolved tourism. Our evolved tourism, love it. It's not going to shut me up. Evolved tourism, housing driven complication. It's should the maintenance of the quaintness are the people that live here, and the people that live here continue to contribute to who and what we are. So taking anything away from that, I think, is a detriment, because that's actually not where the bulk of the problem is coming from. And I 100% agree, or I guess I don't agree because nobody's asked me what I think about it yet, but it comes up here, is that absolutely 100% no, you should not be having a home where you are renting out nightly rentals and you don't live in that home and you are not here. And that is, and there may be extenuating circumstances where people have found themselves in a position where they're not here, but I'm sorry, we are here, and we need to take care of the people that are here, that live, work, breathe, and contribute here, and that have been here and want to continue to be here, and that's our first priority. But it doesn't mean we're taking away from anything from anybody. It means we need to move forward, making sure that it's managed properly.
Mr. McEwen?
Yes, so in my answer to goal A is yes, we need to preserve traditional B&B use in residential areas and consider ways to slow or contain guest suite use in residential areas. And so the 5 actions, the only one I said no to was number 2, remove B&B as an outright permitted accessory use in residential zones. So that was the one thing that we decided we wanted to let residents have that option and exercise it if they want to. But I actually said yes to the other 4 actions.
No, I was just going to say there's a lot of really good actions here, and I thank you, Bruce, for making this report, because it was great how it broke it down. I did say yes to all of them except for remove B&B, except for when we go into the growth and tourism, the density part.
I think we'll get to there, but the capping thing. I think, I mean, there's a few of us that have been here for over 50 years, and the reason why, well, it's the community, right? And so this is taking away from our community. I think the differentiating between the traditional B&B room and the guest suite is really important, because it's not necessarily the B&B room that takes away from our accommodation, because it doesn't have the kitchen available and it's not set up as a suite. But the guest suite, I said yes as outright removing the guest suite from the zones. Yeah.
Do you have another follow-up comment there, Mr. Rowe?
No, I fully agree that we need to remove the guest suite from.
And okay, well, great. And I just, I echo what everyone else is saying here. So, the only thing I did agree with Councillor McEwen here, obviously remove BB as an outright permitted accessory use in residential use zones. I said no. I still believe that, why this was created, seeing that for some people going through a little loophole, that I hope that we can tighten up. And I think that a little further on, we start talking whether 3 rooms or 1 room, but that'll be the next question. So do you feel like you've got your questions answered on that one, Mr. Gregg?
That's great direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, you've asked us in a great way, otherwise we will go on and go on.
You're getting there. Go on and on.
Okay, moving on to goal B, was establish a balance between residential and tourism, commercial accommodation in residential zones to prioritize residential uses and maintain the lowish growth scenario. I checked off yes, but did you want to speak to this question at all?
I think just briefly what we sort of covered, there's a little bit of context in the report, that lowish growth scenario was aiming at trying to tip the balance back towards a balance of 60% residential and 40% tourist accommodation, or at least a majority of residential, where right now we're probably at 50-50. We're kind of lacking some housing. I think there's no surprise to anyone in town about that. But while getting that balance back while keeping growth low, keeping it to about 1% over 30 years. That means, yes, there's that, there's a limit to how much tourist accommodation in all forms kind of fits within that picture, and we can, revisit the various options at a later date. But these questions were sort of like, okay, how do we sort of move forward with keeping the growth in mind? And we just noted that other communities have wrestled with this as well, and some of the things they've done around like lowering the number of units, putting caps on it. If we go down that road, we'll have to get some legal advice, because it's kind of new territory on if there is, a cap on business licenses. Well, what happens when you hit the cap and that kind of thing? So, but the questions are there to kind of prompt that discussion, I guess.
Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
I'll start this one off. I do think it's important to establish a balance between the residential and tourist commercial accommodation. I think that when we're talking about a percentage and where we're currently sitting in the picture that has been presented to us, there is over 30 years. There's going to be a certain amount of balance that's going to happen naturally as we increase long-term accommodation between our developments that we're already, happy with and are really great ideas for being able to house people in Euclid, and 0 of those are open to any short-term anythings, including vacation guest suites or B&Bs. They are all 100% long-term rentals. So with those, when those come online, we are going to see the percentage of these short-term accommodations automatically balance out to a degree, and I may be simplifying it, but I feel as though when we're looking at these actions, I think that, again, reducing or taking away the ability of somebody to do something that they already currently live here and invested in under the correct parameters that they are supposed to be operating those in, actually doing it properly isn't the answer. I believe that if we're talking about capping the number of things, I think, sure, capping them in that we're already naturally doing that because we've already said no more short-term anything in these new developments. So literally we have capped. You either currently exist the way that you invested in already and are here and are doing your thing, or moving forward, you are buying into something that you know 100% that you are not going to be doing a lot of the things that have been happening and pushing the envelope and breaking the rules and I mean, it comes, people will say it comes down to necessity, but I don't think it was a necessity when I was 20 or 30 to have oceanfront property, and the way I could afford that was by doing something that my property was not allowed to do to begin with, and I knew that buying it. And I can sit there and say, well, I can't afford if I don't do this. Well, sorry, I could go off on a really harsh tangent there, but I think everybody understands what I'm saying in that everybody moving forward is buying just like when we bought, or just like when you bought, knowing exactly what you can or cannot do with your property, and you're happy buying that, and you're happy to be here, and you're happy to contribute to the community. And I don't think we sit up here and have the power to change any rules or move the goalposts now. I don't subscribe to that. I do believe that everything we can do move forward, if we want to call it capping or whatever, we've already done that. We've already made those moves to ensure that anything moving forward doesn't compound this problem. And I believe strongly that way, that the numbers will shift, because there will be no more after what already exists. And the future council could sit up here and change that rule down the road, and that is what it is. But I sit here feeling that way right now.
Definitely agree that we need to establish a balance between residential and tourist commercial accommodation in residential zones, to prioritize residential uses and maintain the lowish growth scenario. For the actions, I ticked yes for all of them except for number 4, to cap the number of B&Bs in residential zones. I don't think that's really necessary, but capping the number of guest suites in residential zones I think would help, as would those other actions of reducing them from 3 to 1.
Thank you for clearly answering that one. Councillor Hoare, any comments regarding this question? Goal B?
Oh, you mean I have to stick to the question?
No, you can do whatever you want.
Well, I don't even know where to start. The thing, as I see it, and the example that Mr. Gregg showed us is, illustrative of this. We have numbered companies coming in and opening places with 3 guest suites in them, and that is a business opportunity. Having a traditional B&B, that's actually a mortgage helper. But bear in mind that when you get your mortgage for your $1 million build, you have to be able to afford that, because by yourself without any, you can't get a mortgage saying that I'm renting these 3 guest suites. That doesn't exist. You actually have to get the mortgage as it stands, which means that the people that are doing these, the numbered companies who are coming in and building these places, they have lots of money, and they're not here. Guarantee they're not living here. Well, can't guarantee it really, but probably they're not. So yeah, I would love to see no guest suites and traditional B&Bs to be a single one in a house. I have no problem with people having a temporary use permit application for 2 or even 3, but I think they need to ask for it. And while you said that we've capped it in the developments, Councillor Cole, that we've got on the go, the thing is that the heart of town and the quaint part of town is the residential part of town, where all these things are being built right now, where they can be built with 3 suites, where they can be built with 3 B&Bs. And so I think we need to pull some things back. Everybody that's already got one is going to get one. That they're already in. That was the whole point of the other bylaw that we didn't look at last time. But we really need to pull it back a little bit and make them ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. It doesn't mean that we say no. I mean, we or whoever says no. Yeah, after one.
I have a question for Councillor Hoare because she made a statement that I too agree. Guest suites, any guest suites are just, again, because it's not commercial. It's anyways, yes, I agree 100%. But you said that if done properly, the traditional B&B rooms and the places that are already allowed to do them, they should just get one and have to ask for more. Why?
No, I'm saying the ones that are already established, that they're still going to have their however many they have.
Okay.
I'm saying that, say Sean wanted to start a B&B.
Or me. Sure.
Or you. That you would have to ask for more than that.
Why do you think I should have to ask?
Because I think we need to slow the growth.
So but that should be then Sean's burden to ask and pay for, that should be his burden to take on?
After one.
After one.
After
Yes.
one.
But why?
So you could have one B&B suite,
Sure.
okay? Because if you look at parking, if you look at, there's a whole bunch of factors that factor into that.
Sure.
So if you wanted more than one suite, then because we're not going to please everybody here, but I think we need to make a huge statement because look at our growth right now, and look at our co-op, our health center, all these things that we don't have the housing for. We have enough accommodation, but we don't have the businesses to run it. So we need to make a stance to say that if you want to have a B&B, I could start a B&B tomorrow, okay, let's say,
Sure.
but I'll start one room, and then if you really want to have more people in your house, great, good for you. You're crazy.
Sure.
But then you could apply for a tub.
I will say that just to remove me out of it, because that's not, I don't want to be
I know.
that
Well,
either.
that's why I use my head.
Yeah, right.
That'd be
But I do feel strongly that it shouldn't fall on the people who worked really hard, bought their home, these were the rules, continue to work really hard, they're going to pay off their mortgage, they're doing their thing here in the community, they're contributing. And I don't really, so you want to take 2/3 of their ability, 2/3 of their ability away from that particular amount or section or sect, but only from there. I mean, I'm taking the guess. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I'm taking that out of it. But what makes them 2/3 of their ability responsible to the community for our issues more so than Maryland? So Maryland, you don't get 2/3 of your ability to make financial gains off of your residential home taken away. And other people who are already doing it because they've wanted to or needed to, they don't. But people who always had that option, we're gonna put that burden on them solely, and just them. Why?
I do understand your point. So now, but then I lost what I was going to say.
It was a good one.
was a
though, 'cause
really
I
good
could
one.
see. You're like,
You need to use that pen once in a
I
while.
have to use that pen. So I've been on the fence with this one.
sure.
Okay, so you can knock me off on either side. So, but this is in my head. People that run in B&Bs, I mean, that is a hard job, and you have people in your home, but yet there's some people that have built them seriously like guest suites. They're just attached to the house. They're like guest suites. That is it's almost like a hotel. That is not a
But
B&B
that's a
in
different
your
problem
home.
and another topic.
That's still run as a B&B.
But therein lies the problem. We need to actually solve that problem and not take something away from people who aren't part of the problem. We can't punish the people for the fact that some people are creating this problem or doing it wrong. We're going to punish those that don't. We can't do that.
Well, then how? Okay,
We need to
so-
refocus on what the problem is and actually solve the root of the problem, which are all of these things, which are all of the people who are doing it the wrong way or who are pushing those boundaries so far that now it's not anything that it was intended to be.
But they're not doing it the wrong way, because for example, like that example, whoever that poor person is, I'm sorry, but that example that was on the slide, that so-called bed and breakfast that looks
That's
like
not
a
a
hotel,
bed and breakfast.
but it is zoned that way, so you're allowed to build.
You're not
that.
allowed to do. No, please, Mr. Gregg.
Those get building permits because they comply with the zoning you have today. That is the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't change and not change at the same time. The problem is the door is wide open to those 3-suite homes with the zoning because it was written at a time when Airbnb didn't exist. It just never went that way. There was no demand for it. So those are being built legally today, and that's why we're going down this road of looking at how do you change the bylaws in response to what's happening.
So to be very clear, then I think it needs to be changed, and 100%. If we are allowing guest suites, then I agree with nixing them 100% but the B&Bs are something separate.
Currently, you have one definition. It's bed and breakfast. And what I was showing, we're trying to make a differentiation because it seemed to be meaning two different things in people's minds in the public hearing and the comments of council. Today, what is being built as a bed and breakfast as an accessory use to a single family home is that 3 motel rooms attached to a house legally. And that's why we're suggesting some changes to the bylaw may be warranted in what the community desires.
So then all I'm doing here today is sitting and asking that we let B&Bs remain B&Bs and actually be held to being B&Bs, because in my mind they always should have been, and guest suites be dealt with as the way they should be. And if to me they're two totally separate things. They're in the same graph and they're in the same motion here, or the same advice on these action items. But I 100% think that it needs to be crystal clear that B&Bs are meant to be done the way they're supposed to be done. And the way that it was shown is that all these guest suites, like these little mini motel rooms, and if we need to then, if the answer is to separate in a bylaw so that people who need or want to do B&Bs in their property in the future get to, and that guest suites are dealt with appropriately, because the envelope's been pushed way too far on that, in my opinion.
That was a B&B that you saw.
Which is wrong, because that's not a B&B. We're saying a B&B is this.
A B&B
But
has
yet-
no kitchen. A
Ex-
B&B has no kitchen. It is a hotel room, like just a
No,
hotel
a B&B is a bedroom with a
little
basket of
hotel
muffins.
room with a basket of muffins. So you have no kitchen, really.
And so I think this is actually really helpful because it's shedding light on where council members are at. And it's really what is the expectation versus what does the bylaw say today, and we need to update the bylaw so that tomorrow it will meet what is that expectation of a B&B being the basket of muffins in the room down the hallway in the house. That means we need to change the zoning bylaw and probably our business licensing bylaw to get there, because what's today on the books allowed under the bylaws, the door's wide open to more of those guest suites happening, and that's where this is all coming from. So this
We're
is
all
really,
on the same page
I'm
about guest suites.
sensing
Guest
that.
suites is totally, it's a bed and breakfast thing.
Any other comments?
I will make another statement in that I believe the guest suites are meant to be making money, and like Councillor Hoare said, people probably aren't even living here. It's that, to me, a B&B explained the way that I believe the bylaw should remain, is that people living in their home that choose to have people down the hall in the bedroom that my son used to sleep in before he got his big boy bedroom. If I want somebody sleeping in my home across the hall from me and I want to welcome them to the community, I want to give them a basket of muffins, I want to tell them the hours that Jiggers is going to be at the, then that's what I bought my house, knowing that if I should or could or want to be that ambassador for the community, or out of necessity I needed to. I think we can't take that away from people. But that other thing is a money-making, over your head, did it, whether it's greed, whether it's whatever drives human, 100%.
Well, but bed and breakfast is still an opportunity. However, so there's different looks of homes with bed and breakfast. There's a difference when I put someone in Jack's old room across the hall because he's gone to university, or the difference of a 3-room just attached to the house looks like a hotel bed and breakfast. Like there's a difference there. So how can you differentiate that in zoning, whether it's like a residential home or this palatial?
Through the chair. So the kind of things you could do is change the definition of what is a bed and breakfast use, and so that it, must have, cannot have this separate entrance and the code on the door, and it could be simplified to be, must use the main entrance and not have any cooking facilities. So it's really is the bedroom and bathroom within a house, and there's a limit to how zoning can get into the design of how people design their homes. But I think between the business licensing and the bylaw, we can bring forward some amendments that would I think zero in on what I'm hearing is that appetite to allow what is the traditional B&B in a home, and set aside the hotel room attached to someone's house.
Yes, because that would deter people to have someone across the hallway from you, for goodness sakes. Like, yes, I think we're.
So what I'm hearing is that we're saying yes to action 1, 3, and 5, and no to action 2 and 4. Okay, great.
Good job. And I think you did list a fact or numbers that those residents that are actually running a B&B, I think you listed on a previous slide that they have one B&B.
What we're seeing with applications, they're tending to apply for one.
Yeah.
And the resident applicants, if you will, and the non-resident applicants tend to apply for 2 and 3. There seems to be a trend there.
Somewhere in here, maybe it says it already, where it can be that you have to be a resident applicant to have a true B&B, because you have to be living in that house in order for somebody to stay.
Further to it.
Okay, yeah.
Stay. Don't jump. No jumping.
Keep in your lane, keep in the lane.
Mr. Greg. Mr. Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarity for myself and staff. So if the current direction right now is that would change the definitions, that add in a definition for traditional B&B and differentiate that between a guest suite. I just want to make sure that there's clarity that this would be applying to all of the residential zones. So as we change the bylaw, it's effective to all properties, whether you purchased your property 50 years ago or 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
So I just want to be clarity, because there was a point of discussion in previously on how this affects long-term residents, people that are buying properties today, and people that are buying properties tomorrow. So there was the overlay that Mr. Gregg presented in the second bylaw, which could address this, but I think there's, just to make sure that we don't circle back when we do a revision to the bylaw, you can't divide it out in that manner. You would have to use that second avenue to differentiate between people that have already had that opportunity versus the people that are new applicants. So that's where that overlay would come in. So I know there was no discussion on that at this point in time, but I think it might be worthwhile for council to provide staff with clarity on the impact of making this change, and is this change going to meet council's intent?
Go ahead.
So, to be clear and saying it out loud for anybody listening, in doing what we're saying, and we're going, okay, well, 2 and 4 are separated from 1, 3, and 5 under the actions, that means, okay, here's where I actually don't know something. I'm allowed to have Not that I always know things, but it was. I was just like, wait a second, make sure you're clear on this. So I'm currently allowed to have 3 B&B, real B&Bs in my home. I don't have that many. I have too much stuff. There's not enough spare rooms. But I'm not allowed to have a guest house, a guest suite. So the people that are allowed to have guest suites, that already live in their homes, that bought their homes planning on doing it but haven't done it yet, then theoretically we would be doing the same thing to them, which I'm saying we should not be doing to people who already are allowed to. Like, this is another
Yes.
go.
Yes, but again, we have to start somewhere and make a stance, and we're not going to make, I'm sorry everybody, but we're not going to make everybody happy. I mean, we're short accommodation for our community, full stop. So how are we going to get there? So if I bought a lot, if I'm still have my lot on Edwards Place, and I was going to build tomorrow with this, I cannot build a guest suite. I could build 3 B&Bs, but depending what that comes out. Yeah.
But again, in this, there is still a process for a property owner. If they wanted to have a guest suite later on that thing, there's still a process for them, depending on this bylaw looks, to apply for a temporary use permit for guest suite, correct?
Certainly, you could have someone apply at any time for something that the zoning doesn't allow. Yeah.
So in light of all things paperwork and fees and such, is there a way to allow the people who currently can do it before a new decision is made to have a year or 6 months grace period, at least to be able to, if that was their plan, maybe next year they were going to do it. Maybe they've been planning on 20 years for doing it. It comes from the same place as what I just talked
Talking
about.
about guest suites?
Yes.
It is
I think the reality is, the fact is, we're going to get 200 more of them, and the reality
And-
is, they don't have a co-op number, and I'm sorry to generalize, they don't work, they're not in the room, and they're a
And-
numbered company, and we're trying to fight this.
And a
And
guest
so-
suite has a full kitchen and could be housing community members.
So, yes, and well, we're in the same town, so at the end of the day, if you want to have 3 people go in your house and for B&B, that's fine. That's up to that person, right? Anyways,
I
So-
love that now, it's got to be the co-op number, and if Teresa doesn't know you, you can.
okay, we got clarity. We're good, I think.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to make sure that point of clarity was made because
we need more
No.
Pine Streets, Bay Streets, Helen Streets, and we want to contain the quaintness of those neighborhoods. So, yes, as much as we want people to invest in our community, but for the right reason. Okay, we're done with goal B.
Just for clarity in the minutes, I'd just like to make sure that we know exactly its actions 1, 3, and 5. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes.
And then Joey, is there something in there that Bruce was asking about the zoning change, about the residential home compared to like the palace with the bed and breakfast? Okay.
Okay, we go to goal C. Are we good?
I'm still,
Yep.
I'm just going to state that I'm perfectly comfortable with reducing the number of rooms to 1. That's
I am
you know,
too, but
with
we'll wait for that.
action 2.
I think it also.
It's
I'm just saying.
Mr. Lawrence.
If council is uncertain of that action with respect to B&Bs, I think there's clarity with respect to if there's a opportunity for guest suites, it's reduced from 3 to 1. With respect to B&Bs, I think there's not clarity on whether or not we have direction to reduce it from 3 to 1 or 3 to 2 for that matter, in this iteration of the bylaw. So if council could give specific direction on that item, do you want to reduce it or yes or no to 2 or 1, or leave it at 3.
I got 2 heavy no's to my right, and did you have a desire to reduce it from 3?
No, because I think that changing that zoning that Mr. Gregg was looking at
Solves the real problem.
solve the real problem, and also thinking about that slide of who lives in the community and just applying for home, and who's crazy enough to live in the community and apply for 3, and or who doesn't live in the community and applies for 3. There's quite the difference there, I think, that
I'm not. I think it needs to be reduced, whether it's 1 or 2. We need to drop the numbers, and they can apply for a TUP. And maybe we make a streamlined process, to deal with some of the paperwork and maybe there's a streamlined process if Sean decides that he wants to have, rent 3 rooms in his house.
Or 2?
Or 2.
Because the 2 is the maximum. So, you want to stay at 3?
3.
3 is the maximum? 3 is the maximum, okay. 3 is the maximum. No, I think he just gave me the heads nod. He
We're
gave
just
me
trying
the
to be
head nod.
clear.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. Goal C. Stop or slow the loss of existing long-term rental suites. Marilyn, or Councillor McEwen, you start us on a good trend there. Did you want to start us?
Keep it succinct.
I think I said yes to 1, 2, and 3, and no to 4.
I left the question mark up for. Waiting to hear you what you had. Well, do you want to go through them individually then? Mr. Gregg, do you have any comments regarding this one before we get started?
Certainly, there's because there was a number of comments that came out at the public hearing, and council made some comments that indicating currently, if you're operating a B&B or whatever it is under the guise of a B&B, that one of the regulations say you can't operate a B&B and also have a secondary suite. And I think that probably goes back to both will need parking, and so it'd be too much. So it's sort of one or the other. And so there was a number of comments saying, well, gee, if I could, I'd like to operate an Airbnb, but also have a long-term rental. So that's where that one's a bit of an outlier among the other 3. So that was part of the sort of thought around prompting that question, or if there's some other variation of it. That would be interesting, of interest to have council's thoughts on that kind of blending of uses. Because sort of the notes on here around one of the things that has been noted in the housing needs report was that there is a loss of rental housing that's been caused by the rise in the B&B. I think we counted of what we can document with building permits. There's at least 37 suites that were converted to Airbnbs. And so that is something the housing needs report has sort of pulled out, and that rental housing is sort of most needed. We have about 108 of them right now, and so the trend would, I guess prompting this is can we find a way to stop if B&Bs are coming up to have them not be displacing that rental housing? That's really key for the housing supply in town. Because as we heard, it is such a challenge for employers as much as anything, and so that I think leads to kind of the questions of whether a B&B use needs to displace an existing suite, or can they coexist? I guess that's kind of the question.
I think whatever we do, and whatever it looks like, means that in no way, shape, or form are we restricting any sort of long-term rental. And as a matter of fact, if I don't know as far as to saying you only permit a guest, well, some of that's going to be solved with the other. Anyways, I think that everything should be done to allow people, however that looks, to have long-term rentals.
May I ask a question? What did you mean by number 2? Can you explain that to me, please? I put a question.
It was a question that came up that if B&Bs, one of the reasons I think for concern, because we heard from a number of people who own a home, don't operate a B&B, really don't intend to, but they want to keep the option. because that was that story of like, well, what if I lose my job, and so as the mortgage helper I can turn to Airbnb in my home. So that was their reason for not wanting to see it lost. Of course, that use comes at a cost of permanent housing for somebody else, but that question of, can the regulations allow that kind of maintain that sort of, is that a desire to have it be sort of a low barrier, easy for someone who owns a home to rent out the room down the hall if they need to? Is that we just want to clarify
that sort
and
of
confirm
helps
Yes.
with your issue. This is this whole thing. If we can streamline it, maybe for that sort of situation, or so that you don't lose the ability to do a B&B, like you have like an easier way to apply for it following this change, which would take care of some of your issues around the paperwork and the.
No, because I don't think that the people who, just because you're in a position or you have some sort of crazy desire that you want to have people sleeping across the hall from you, you know, Friday and Saturday nights in June, July, and August, or whatever you intend to do, means that you want somebody staying across the hall from you, using your washroom, sharing your fridge. It's not the same setup. It's not having somebody, it's not, it doesn't.
Are we
But-
talking about question 2 here?
But you could, unfortunately, make more money renting out that room Friday and Saturday night than dealing with someone living in your suite, like a student working at the wherever in town, and living there monthly. So why wouldn't they? I see now. I see where Jennifer's coming from about the cap a little bit. I understand that, because you are taking away still, because there's rooms for rent everywhere.
But if you're going to not let me rent out Bo's bedroom for a night, I'm certainly not gonna, that's not gonna push me into letting somebody live in there full time. That's not gonna serve that purpose. It's not, just because I can't do one, or it's more difficult to do one, doesn't mean I'm gonna open myself up to the other. And it's not that it's not enough money, it's about, I think they're two completely separate things, and just because you restrict one doesn't mean the person's going to default to the other.
Mr. Gregory, when you're referring to long-term rental suites, are you referring to guest suites, or are you talking about rooms in a home when you ask that question?
Really, it secondary suite, which is like a long-term rental tenant in a secondary suite, is what we mostly we're referring to. I mean, there's a point of clarification here. The way the zoning is written now, the way the bed and breakfast regulations read, it's one or the other. If you want to get into the Airbnb, even if it's a room down the hall, you can't also have a secondary suite attached or in the basement or whatever. So one case that we've seen repeatedly is somebody who's like, well, okay, my tenant moved out. I'm not going to let another long-term tenant in, because even if I don't convert the suite, I'll just leave it vacant. Now I can get into the Airbnb business occasionally when I want to. And so there is the two currently are incompatible in the zoning. Is there openness or an interest in saying, well, no, you can keep your long-term tenant if you want to get into the Airbnb and rent out a room? Or is it necessary to have a long-term tenant before you're, mortgage helper, before you get into the Airbnb business? I mean, those are different variations, and we're trying to kind of prompt where's the desire.
So in the I don't think it's zoning, but how would you be able to make sure that a resident had a long-term rental before they had an Airbnb or a B&B room?
You could do it in your business licensing by requiring, show us where's your lease? What is there's sort of a number of things you could do under your business licensing. You need a business license to operate an Airbnb. Oh, do you have a tenant in that suite? Does your house have a suite? It may be something that is a requirement that could apply to new, as opposed to existing ones as well. So there's a lot of different ways it could be done, and we're trying to sort of figure out what the parts are so we can go and draft something that hits close to the target, if you will.
How many current unpermitted operating I don't know even what we're calling them now, but I guess the places where you can do both the guest suites and or B&Bs. How many of those are there? Because I can do B&Bs, so you can't force me to somehow build a guest suite in my house that I don't have any space to do it, and the cost that that would involve would defeat the purpose of, forbid the fact that I have to make a nightly rental off the B&B and somebody across the hall from me. So how many of those places, those homes in this community have the ability to do both and haven't, and then how many people would be affected by saying, oh, well, if you want to do this, you got to do this first? Because I think strong-arming people into having long-term renters and knowing the or hearing about landlords and how much rights they do or don't have and the nightmare that can be. I don't think we can, that's kind of high-handed measures, in my opinion, if you're currently zoned to do both. And anyways, I don't know. And maybe the previous decisions fix some of that if it's separated out or...
I think that's why I said no to number 4, because I don't believe either that you should force somebody to do one thing before they have the other. But I said yes to number 3, that they can have both. A secondary suite or an ADU rental as well as a B&B. Yes.
I think currently it doesn't. Currently you can't have both. That's the thing, right? You can have one or the other.
Currently, the regulations will allow, allows a secondary suite, it allows bed and breakfast, but not at the same time. So it's a choice, and that's
All of R1 is that case?
Yes.
Yes.
So I decided I don't want to have B&Bs in 20 years, but instead I want to have if it all things given equal, I could have a secondary suite,
yes.
but not both. Okay, sorry.
I just want to see more long-term rental stock. So, I am all about let's work on the ADUs. Let's make it possible to have both, because you may find that some people do, and maybe some of those guest suites, maybe something becomes a long-term space.
If I may, the number 4, that was sort of toying with, is it an incentive for
Right.
actually constructing? This is more thinking of like new builds, where is that guest suite something that, okay, if we're going to allow that, is that sort of an incentive to create some long-term housing? You have to include the suite or the accessory cottage with a long-term tenant in there if you're going to get into that type of tourist accommodation.
But since we don't really want to do guest suites.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. If we were to allow them, then I feel like I wouldn't have a problem, but we're not allowed. So,
So really,
Yeah.
4 is a moot point.
yeah. And 2 is just one of those, that runs along with my whole restricting the numbers, is making it easier if Sean decides to run a B&B because he lost his job and he needs to still make his mortgage payments. And poor Sean. Well, no, that's maintaining the lower barrier. That's like having a streamlined system, or having making it
Barriers make the
easier.
process easy for the applicant when they come
Yeah.
into the office. There isn't this big.
It's not jumping through 10
They're
hoops.
making it easy. So you're an owner, you want to do a B&B, you walk in, your happy planning department, fill a couple forms out, and hopefully they issue you a
Isn't it
permit.
that way now, though?
There's probably a bit more of a process, Mr. Gregg.
Currently, there is, I'd say, a very low barrier, which is why we see so many applications and so many new B&Bs in town. And so the question, and some of this is, again, okay, if we're changing the definition so that a B&B is a bedroom down the hallway, this was around, we want to maintain that as, okay, that's an outright thing in the zoning. And then the question of is that for the first unit, or is it 2 or 3? We had that sort of whole discussion, as opposed to if you had to apply for the second or third for a permit to do that, there's variations there, but I think the idea, what we were hearing, is an interest in change of financial circumstances. I'm in a pinch. Currently it is a low barrier, and people liked that idea of at least being able to rent out a room.
Yes. Yeah, keep it simple. If it can be I'm all about just a little streamlined process. Like maybe somebody has to come in and actually apply, but it's quick and it's not 10
So-
hoops.
Currently, if a bed and breakfast is the room down the hallway, it's a business license application. There's construction involved, like converting what was a secondary suite and turning it into now the guest suite, if you will. That's a different, adds another layer to it. Because currently it's not a zoning or temporary use permit because it's permitted in the zoning. The zoning's quite open to the bed and breakfast.
So we're all in agreement 1 to 3? We're good? I'm gonna lean on you heavy here, Councillor McEwen. Goal D, add ADUs as a permitted secondary use in residential zones.
Yeah, so I said yes to that goal, and I said yes to all of the actions.
Look at that, we all agree.
I think that's, we don't need to argue about that one.
Huh? No lunch and dinner, we all agree. Any more clarity on anything specific there, Mr. Gregg?
No, I think that was clear and concise. 3 yeses, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted, if you don't mind, yeah, we have one more in the back, if you don't mind. Yeah, the flip her over to some of these actions. Councillor McEwen, what do you got? Yes, please.
This is under other. Okay, I said yes to all those 4.
We were just talking about the one prior to that. Goal D. This is bonus round. Yeah, so I was in agreement with Councillor McEwen.
I have a question to Mr. Gregg. For number 3 and 4, though, if we were to say that they requires notification of the neighbors and input from the neighbors, like what is that? What is the cost to the municipality for that and the time?
So, through the chair, depends how it's done, and so there are 2 different things that notification of neighbors before, say, a B&B or guest suite is authorized. Currently, say someone comes in for a business license, okay, we could a requirement of a B&B in some municipalities. There's a little sign that goes on the property on the corner that says bed and breakfast, max so many beds, so many parking spaces. I mean, there's some municipalities regulate where you have a little standard sign that identifies this is a B&B and this is how many units are required. And some of that's been around sort of controlling the over occupancy, I think. But it could be something like that where it's really on the applicant to pay for that sign and put it on the street next to their blue and white address sign, which the fire department's really happy about. So the difference between 3 and 4, if you're requiring input from neighbors before a new B&B or guest suite is authorized, that's the kind of process that you get with a temporary use permit, where you're giving notification, council hears about it before something is being authorized. So that is really like how much input from neighbors is desired, or is it just notifying? Because we kind of heard some comments of both, and we're trying to tease out which is the desired direction.
And that's why I put, I was thinking that. And then, so I put no for number 4, just because of the cost and the time for the municipality. But number 3, if you require notification, it kind of makes that, in my head, that person that is applying for that a little bit accountable for what they're doing and how many people they're going to put in their rooms. Because all the neighbors know now, and some neighbors aren't all that quiet. So that's what was my
No, and
reasoning for that.
I'm definitely a yes for 3, because finding out about B&Bs when I looked at the list on our initial public hearing agenda feels like a million weeks ago. I think it's really hard in some of our residential zones to have B&Bs just opening up left, right, and center without anybody knowing. So I'm all about the notification. I agree though that requiring input, that's a cost thing. And I'm like, people that are really upset about it, you're gonna hear about it anyway.
But at least
know,
there'll be a process for them
but-
to do that. Right now, it's a little too late when they pop up and without
and it's already signed and sealed.
And through the mayor, I mean, the
Hard to
difference
ride.
between the input before it's being authorized is really means the authorization of that use is really with council. And so there's that, like a variance or like a temporary use permit, that's one regulatory mechanism of where, okay, if the neighbors are upset, council hears about it, do they get the license or not? That's one scheme. Whereas if it's allowed in the zoning and it's simply a business license, then there's no mechanism of the neighbor is up in arms so that it stops it. They'll just know, hey, this is happening. And that's part of I guess it's the flip side of the low barrier where, okay, someone applies for a license, it would really be kind of notifying and saying, well, this is happening, so you're aware of what's there and what they're licensed for. That may be what's desired.
I guess I'm thinking back to 2002 when we applied for a rezoning to guest house zoning. And because it was a rezoning, it had first and second reading, and then there was a public hearing. And that's when the opportunity the neighbors could come and give input.
It's a change of zoning.
It's a
sure.
change of zoning. And this is not. This is a change of use, not zoning. But I kind of felt that was fair that the neighbors could come and give their input if they hadn't already tapped me on the shoulder at the co-op.
What did Eric Larson say?
Nothing.
So I think that we run into some dangerous territory when we then let neighbors tell their neighbors what they can or cannot do with their home and the rights that they bought their home with, because they may or may not have purchased their home or have known full well that they're living in their home, that they can do this to, and their neighbor can do that, and then their neighbor's going to do that, and then they get to say whether they can or cannot. I think that's some really sketchy territory.
That's helpful.
Yeah, because we all know that when you ask for input from neighbors, and if it's a temporary use of anything, traditionally, it's directly affected that they have the loudest voice. So I would concur that a notification that there is a B&B, whether it's 2 or 3 suites going before you, just so that they're in the loop, is bedrooms. Thank you for the correction. Okay. Are you good with those answers?
I think that's very clear. Yes.
Just for the record again, so I understand it's approved the goal, or it's 1 through 3, but not 4.
Yes.
If I may, last question, because I
go.
realized that the number 2 was change the minimum requirement for the number of off-street vehicle parking spaces for tourist accommodation residential zones. Does council feel that there should be, or does the committee feel there should be more or less parking required with B&Bs? I mean, this is kind of the extreme example that we had here where you have sort of the purpose-built 3 suites. Well, just that what we're seeing, one of the impacts of having the additional use is that additional parking. And if there's one of the things some municipalities have done is, as I was saying in the notice, maybe there's a little plaque that's right at the driveway that says, there's a B&B that can operate here, maximum 2 cars, maximum 4 guests, whatever, like having that notified. But is there, within our current parking regulations, the house needs 2 parking spaces, a secondary suite needs an additional parking space, every B&B room operating needs an additional parking space. This is somewhat stylized, this plan here, but it's based on a real plan with a building permit that's going to be constructed in a neighborhood in Ucluelet this year, where the frontage is like a parking lot, where basically the whole frontage is parking spaces backing on. That meets the bylaw. Is there a desire? I mean, I guess reducing the number is one thing, but within the parking requirement, is there a desire for change, and if so, in what direction?
What's our floor area ratio on that one, huh? They don't take in park. They don't take in parking spaces.
So right now you said that a home is to have, a residential home is to have 2 parking spaces?
A house is to have 2.
And if you have a suite, there's an extra one?
Yes.
And then each B&B room is, you have to have a parking spot?
Yes.
1 parking spot.
Yes.
Okay.
And currently we don't have any restriction on the number of parking spaces that access directly onto the road. Some municipalities will have, essentially that restriction on the maximum driveway width at the property line. So if it's like allow for a 2-car garage, a 6 or 7 meter, driveway, and then if you have additional parking, you're turning into it as opposed to all of them lined up on the road and backing straight onto the road. It is parking. I mean, there wasn't a lot of discussion around the parking impacts of these accessory uses as they grow through town, but we will hear more and more about them. So this was a chance to sort of prompt, while we're looking at the rules and how these are laid out, is there a desire to change that? And if so, what's council's sense of it?
So if Lara and her husband and her couple of grown children that can both drive, what happens if they each have a vehicle? Currently, what does that matter? Where does that come into play?
Through the chair, the zoning regulations are the minimum requirement. So house has to have, if you're building just a house on a lot, you need to show on your plan that you have at least 2 parking spaces. If you're a car collector and you want to build 5 more parking spaces and you have the space for it, there's nothing restricting you from doing that. It's if my house, I need to have at least 2. If you have a suite, you need to have 1 for the tenant. If you have a B&B, you need to provide a parking space for them so that they're not parking on the street and impacting the neighbors. What is with this kind of layout where it all becomes laid out along the front and backing onto the street, you've just taken away all the public on-street parking for guests as well. So there's kind of a compounded effect there, and why some municipalities say, do whatever you want if you can fit it on the site, great, but you're narrowed to what you actually impact on the public road so that guests can still park along the street to some extent.
But unless we're going to start doing something that you see in the city where you can't park here because it's permit parking, unless we do something like that, anybody can park on the street in front of my house. There's a crummy there right now. There's the RCMP trailer for the parade. Right now, we have nothing in place to stop whoever from parking in front of my house on Helen. So what would make it different unless we were actually going to some sort of crazy permit parking per street, neighborhood, whatever?
If someone is using their frontage to nose in and park, and there's lots of examples in town of people who have a lot of parking spaces there, effectively that sterilizes the public road from on-street parking. That's because you'd be blocking someone's vehicle; they can't back out. Whereas it becomes one big driveway, and we don't have a restriction on what the maximum driveway width is. So someone, and particularly with the B&Bs and the suites, they start to need more parking, and so they're maxing out the site. It takes away all of the public on-street guest parking. So if you're the person who's having the party in the neighborhood, your friends are all struggling to find
I
parking.
can't
if they're
drive
going.
and then leave my car drunk at your house because, there's no on-street parking.
But I know what I do here. I think everyone will support me. It's the fact is, people take offense when you have nightly rentals and there's a lot of cars parked on the road, off-street parking, and half of that's parked the wrong way. And I think it just puts people are just really frustrated with it. So I would think that you're going down the right path regarding parking.
So if it meant some kind of a restriction on the driveway crossing for new development, because this would kick in as someone's building a new home, they have a driveway as opposed to 5 cars backing out onto the road. Okay.
Well,
That's
also,
helpful.
no one really wants to see a parking lot in front of a home like that either, right?
It does change the streetscape.
Change the street.
Hugely,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
I am not against, a two car width, your traditional 2-bay garage, floor area ratio 600 only though for sure. But that makes sense because that is sort of a traditional, like you would have a house and you would have but no, I read that.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
So now, again, because I've only done this a couple times, we will right after we get out of the committee of the whole.
So, Mr. Mayor, there is included within the report at the beginning a recommendation that the committee of the whole can make to council for consideration. So we bring this forward and we get it in as a resolution.
I got this.
Okay.
We recommend that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council direct staff to amend the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310/2022 and the Ucluelet business regulation and licensing bylaw number 922/2003 to meet the objectives and policy changes identified in the July 19th, 2022 Committee of the Whole report number 22-99.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I just again thank you to the planning staff for working on that and asking those questions to us.
So, in order for this item to come up immediately next on the agenda, for council now to consider the committee's recommendation, we'll need a motion to rise and report that recommendation. And then council will come back and consider whether they would like to do what the committee has recommended.
So we're gonna make a motion, take a 5-minute recess, and we're gonna.
Come back and rise and report then. I make a motion for a 5-minute bio break.
Second that. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, then we'll do the rise and report.
there's been a question from the mayor. The mayor's asked whether where we're at on the agenda, and my understanding is that the next step, we're still within the committee of the whole, and the next step is for the committee to decide whether or not they're interested in rising and reporting. At which point it would move to council to consider the committee's recommendation.
Okay, so we're gonna move this motion that Councillor Hoare just moved the intercommittee of the whole, correct? And we're gonna rise and report that same motion.
You're going to come back from your recess, so reconvene your meeting, and then we're looking for a motion. Now it's time for the committee to determine whether they would like to rise and report the motion. So all you need to do is provide a motion that says the committee rise and report the motion adopted by the committee regarding bylaw number or report number
Okay.
22
So we're back in order. And yeah, no doubt. It's okay. I now have a motion to rise and report that the committee of the whole rise and report the recommendations regarding report number 22-99. Is that correct?
made the motion. Now we
I'll
need a
second
seconder.
that.
Any further discussion regarding that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're back in our regular council meeting. Hey, that's where I am.
Regular council meeting. There is a new agenda item, which is this matter right here that you're going to be talking about, and now it's for council to determine whether they would like to take the committee's recommendation or not.
Since the committee rose and reported, council will now consider the recommendation. That's your second personality kicking out here. So you have to see if you agreed with what you just said 20 minutes ago, Councillor Cole. Would council like to adopt the committee of the whole recommendation? Is the question for the group. I believe that
Yes.
is
Yes.
okay. If that is the case, would you please move that recommended motion, Councillor Orr?
I will move that staff amend. I guess I have to.
No.
Council
Oh, so I'll
direct
do it for
staff
you.
to amend the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310/2022 and the Ucluelet business regulation and licensing bylaw number 922/2003 to meet the objectives and policy changes identified in the July 19th, 2022 Committee of the Whole report number 22-99.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay.
Now, I believe there's also a question from staff regarding timing.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So now that council has made this motion, staff is just wanting clarity from council as to the priority of amending the bylaw, bringing it back to a public hearing, and presenting the amended bylaw to council for consideration. As council is aware, we're approaching an election cycle. This will push this discussion item right up against the election cycle and possibly into September. It has been discussed and reviewed by council, obviously, throughout July and June. So it's not a new topic, but it could be a contentious one. So staff just want clarity and confirmation that council is in support of the process that we'll need to undertake, which would be revising the bylaw, hosting a public hearing, and then that bylaw, after public consultation, will be brought back for consideration to council, and that will enter into August and July, and there may be a need to expedite it, a special meeting of council to consider the matter. So just an indication from council if that is acceptable, or the alternative is to draft the amended bylaw and consider it with the new iteration of council after the election.
Councillor Cole?
I don't see the point of putting off business just because it's an election, so I think we need to move forward and get this done.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. No holidays.
Sorry, planning staff.
Where else do you want to go anyways? Okay, we're good? Moving on to bylaws. We have one. Officers and Officials Bylaw. This report is prepared by the Chief Administrative Officers regarding Officers and Officials Bylaw number 1315, 2022. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the bylaw in front of council is with respect to the terms and conditions of employment for the exempt staff, lieu time policies, probation, termination, holidays, etc. Currently, the municipality doesn't have a bylaw that outlines those parameters. We have officers and officials that outline the duties, roles, and responsibilities of the CAO, the Chief Financial Officer, and the Corporate Officer. And a lieu time policy, which is gives discretionary privilege to the CAO to award lieu time as the CAO sees fit, up to 2 weeks. What this does is replace those two, the policy and the old bylaw, and add in all of the other provisions that we don't have, so that there's clarity for the CAO to make decisions and move things forward with staffing, new hires, deals with sick time, leave, all of the benefits policies, etc. So this just provides that clarity. In this bylaw provided to council, there's no monetary actions, there's no additional expenses that would be incurred by the municipality for enacting this bylaw for the exempt staff positions. But it also does allow us to balance out some of the overtime that is incurred by exempt staff. As council may be aware and knows that exempt staff are exempt from banking or incurring overtime. So we use lieu time sort of to balance out those expectations, because they have responsibilities to get bylaws and reports in as needed and as desired by council. So the lieu time policies within this bylaw allow the CAO to help balance out those extra time and duties for our exempt team. It is also, as an added benefit, if we ever attracting new recruits to the municipality, these types of bylaws help provide clarity for new applicants, and it's in line with the majority of municipalities out in BC now. For lieu time policies, it's much more attractive because there is work-life balance ingrained within the system. So that's what this policy is. I can go through the different provisions section by section if council desires. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Okay.
Would you like the readings done separately or all together?
Separate. One is right.
Okay, I will move that council give first, second, and third readings to District of Ucluelet Officers and Officials Bylaw number 1315, 2022.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for filling that up. Yes, a lot of work, and we just skimmed by it in 2 minutes there, so thank you. Okay, we have 5 reports today.
I will just recuse myself for the first 2 reports because I'm one of the organizers on both of those. Next.
Report number 1, Edge to Edge Marathon 2022 road closure. This report is being provided by the Director of Parks and Recreation regarding Edge to Edge Marathon 2022 road closure. Ms. Fortune.
Hello. Yeah, it's on. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Before you, you have the Edge to Edge Marathon potential race route in front of you. We are looking at some road closures, as well as we do have some changes in terms of the start-finish line due to the work due to the work that we'll be doing down at Village Green. So we wanted to avoid that and move the start-finish line basically right out the door is what we're looking at. And so we're looking for some road closures as well. Anything that falls upon Modi's land, we will be doing a separate application for that one. We will require general liability policy for the Chamber of Commerce as we move forward, but this has been a partnership that we've done. The last one we ran was the 20th year anniversary, and we've had a break for 2 years, so 21 is what's coming up this October, and it is the day after elections. Any questions?
Questions for anyone? Okay, there is a couple recommendations. If someone would like to move them, please.
I will move that Council approve option A to authorize the closure of roads for the Edge to Edge Marathon on Sunday, October 16th, 2022. Marine Drive from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Rainforest Drive and Marine Drive to Matterson Road with an interesting spelling, and Marine Drive including Big Beach parking lot, and road closures from 8:30 a.m. to 10 o'clock a.m. from Matterson Road and Marine Drive to Victoria Road and Marine Drive.
Second it. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anybody registered in running? Or you're too busy biking? Okay, I'm going to step up with this next one.
Miss Fortune, are you running?
Yes, I am. Oh, now I've declared it. Oh.
I'm going to pass this next one off to Councillor Hoare. Thank you.
All right, the next report regarding the Dustin Riley Soapbox Derby. Come on, out the door, out the door. Miss Fortune.
So again, we're looking at some road closures to authorize on Saturday, September 17th for the 3rd annual Dustin Riley Soapbox Derby. And we're looking for some closures primarily on Bay Street. Again, this is a special event that Blackrock Oceanfront Resort is sponsoring. They will be required to submit their proof of insurance for this event, and there will be no Modi concerns with this particular event. And there is a bit of a map for you to have a look at if you have any questions. There will be some staff requirements in terms of helping with support on this, just some pre-set up for barricades along the space, as well as tents and tables. Yes, you can. Sorry, my apologies. So in front of you, you have the application for road closures along Bay Street for the 3rd annual Dustin Riley Soapbox Derby with the closures from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is there any questions?
Does council have questions? This one's pretty straightforward. It's run twice quite well. I believe there's a recommendation.
I will move that Council approve option A to authorize on Saturday, September 17th, 2022 for the 3rd annual Dustin Riley Soapbox Derby, the closure of the following roads from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. A. Bay Street from the intersection of Peninsula Road to the intersection of Cedar Road, and B. Cedar Road from the intersection of Bay Street to the intersection of Park Lane.
I'll second. Any more discussion? No. All in favor? Opposed? Oh, look. No.
Thank you very much.
We'll all be racing back from Whistler.
You guys make us proud.
Are we having a soapbox derby and the marathon?
The next report is also provided by the Manager of Corporate Services regarding 2022 Deputy Corporate Officer appointment, Mr. Rotenberg.
Briefly, to the mayor, I went on parental leave in December. My wife had twins. I got to spend some awesome time with my kids. In the meantime, Sharon, or to Paula has done an incredible job doing the work that we do in the Corporate Services Department, and I just really wanted to thank her for the work she's done, because I've had the opportunity to watch these meetings run very smoothly over the last period of time, and well, I like to watch the meetings, and I like my job, that's why we do it, right? And so I wanted to thank her. What we're looking for today is a motion to rescind Paula's appointment as Deputy Corporate Officer, and a motion to appoint myself in that position. The Deputy Corporate Officer position allows me to act as a commissioner for the taking of oaths, which means that I can witness documents like land title documents where that need to be witnessed by the commissioner taking oaths. It also puts me in a position to provide support to the corporate officer in our organization, that's our CAA. I cannot marry people, and I apologize, Paula. It's Paula who's done an incredible job. Thank you.
But you just had twins, so you're allowed to, you know, not
Maybe
remember
it's
people's
baby brain,
names.
but maybe that's just a good excuse. So if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them.
No, then there isn't. No questions, I don't think. If someone would like to move these recommendations.
A little bit sad. I'm happy to have Joey back, but that council rescind. See, it sounds horrible. That council rescind Paula Mason's appointment as District of Equilate Deputy Corporate Officer, and that council appoint Joseph Rotenberg as the District of Equilate Deputy Corporate Officer.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Paula, I know I said it before. You did a wonderful job for not, you know, just for organization, the community. You're gonna have a great future in whatever you want to do. And I hope that wherever you're working for in the office is going to keep you stimulated and busy. So thanks again for what you had done for the community. Really appreciate that. Report number 4. This report is provided by the Director of Engineering Services, is regarding contract authorization for storm drain and sanitary sewer upgrades. Welcome, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. This next report is about the installation of 2 new utility lines on Peninsula Road in between Matterson and Otter. Specifically, it's asking for the authorization. Specifically, it's asking for the Council's consideration for the contract, for a potential contract between the district and a contractor named Vike Construction to supply the materials and install a new sanitary line and a new drain line on Peninsula Road in between Matterson and Otter. A little bit of history on this one. The existing conditions there are that there currently isn't utility services that run in between Matterson and Otter. There isn't a sanitary line or a storm line. So that's not good for future growth and future development in the area. In order for Lot 16, for example, to be developed and be constructed, these 2 utility lines are required to move that flow from across Peninsula Road, from Matterson to Otter, and off to Helen Road. As well, in that area, these utility services would also reduce capacity off of current infrastructure there that's running over capacity, quite over capacity. Victoria Lift Station is well over capacity. So these lines would enable flow to be redirected out of that area in line with our long-term 30-year plans, our sanitary master plan, and our storm master plan. So that's sort of the why it's needed and the how. And then recently in June, district staff issued a tender for construction posted on BC Bids, and so that went quite successfully. 3 proponents responded, and the proponent that was most qualified, available, and had also the lowest price and availability was that contractor named Vike Construction. And so they're available to start right away and be completed the work within 3 months. So they would come to town and install that new sanitary line and the new storm line as well. The cost that they provided was within the allocated budget. That budget was set aside specifically for these two lines in 2021 for 2022's budget. So that said, so the request is for council's consideration to authorize that contract, and I'll leave it with you. Any questions? If you want, here I am.
Any questions for Mr. McIntosh?
I'm just curious why the amount of time is so much lower and the cost is so much lower on Vike Construction's bid versus the other two.
Through the mayor, the so Vike Construction is they're new to the market. They have experience to do this project, but it appears that they're perhaps looking for work.
They're eager. That's all good then. I was just curious.
Okay, there's no questions for Mr. McIntosh. There is a recommendation.
I will move that council approve option A to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute a contract to Vike Construction Limited for a total of $422,000 plus GST for the supply of all materials, labor, and equipment to install Peninsula Road storm and sanitary sewer upgrades between Matterson and Otter Street.
Second.
We got a second. Are we good? Is there?
Oh, excuse me, through the mayor. Thank you. CEO Mr. Lawrence has just noted that there is an error in the report. The resolution is asking for 422 plus GST, and I believe that the total is actually
Plus GST?
Yeah.
Well, we got a seconder on the floor, so yeah, we'll just defeat that and start over again. Okay, all in favor? You good? It's all good. It's all good. Whatever you want to do. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, I can try this
That
again.
one's defeated, and then we'll try it again.
That council approves option A to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute a contract to Vike Construction Limited for a total of $443,000 plus GST for $443,100 plus GST for the supply of all materials, labor, and equipment to install Peninsula Road storm and sanitary sewer upgrades between Matterson and Otter Street.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you.
And report number 5. This report is provided by the Director of Engineering Services. Is regarding reserve and surplus policy number 5-1860-1.
Pretty sure it's the CFO.
You are not Miss Monteith. Just reading the script. Just reading the script. Welcome, our CFO.
Director of Engineering Services now. Wow. Sorry, James. Nice meeting you. Okay. Through the mayor, good afternoon, council. I introduced the concept of a reserves and surplus policy during the 2022 budget process. And during that time, I believe I provided an example of what one would look like. So essentially, it provides a formal framework and guidelines to support and add structure to the district's financial planning activities. In addition, the policy will help direct the allocation of any surplus funds into various reserves based on prioritization. So there's essentially 3 components of reserves. So we have the statutory reserves in Section 2. They're ones that are absolutely required by the community charter to be established if funds are received from specific sources. And the charter spells out how those funds can be spent. So those are the most restrictive funds, and we do have those in place. The non-statutory reserves in Section 3 are reserve funds that are established by bylaw, and they're not mandatory under the charter. The funds are restricted for the purposes laid out in the bylaw. These funds get built up over time and are generally for big ticket items. In these cases, I'm talking about things like affordable housing initiatives,
buildings like recreation centers and fire trucks, things like that. Regular contributions to funds like these assist in decreasing reliances on borrowing money, as well as provide us with leverage for matching grants in the future. And then we have reserve accounts, which are generally for a combination of capital and operations. And these are the most flexible and can usually be dealt with through the 5-year financial plan and a resolution. The capital items tend to be more for ongoing infrastructure replacement projects, emergency repairs over and above the 5-year plan, or smaller one-time projects not within the plan as they arise. For operations, it could be litigation over and above our budget, economic downturns, pandemics, major reassessments on properties, and shortfalls in revenues, whether it be developments or user fees. So I reviewed policies from several other municipalities and made a matrix, and then compared the most common ones with what the district currently has in place in order to bring you this today. It's important to note that the regular annual contributions will be part of the budget process, with an initial focus on gradually building up reserves to the minimum levels suggested on Appendix A. So council will be part of this process every year. For the most part, the minimums right now are an amount that relates to the yearly operating budget. So for example, some of them you'll see relate to 2 to 4 months of regular operations, or directly tied into what will be a fully funded capital infrastructure plan that, as you know, is in progress and was introduced in draft in the fall of 2021. Then we don't have to keep coming back with the policy to update it to actual dollars. If the policy is approved today, my next steps would be to come back to council with new or updated bylaws and some recommendations on transferring some of our unappropriated surpluses into the established reserves. And I believe I'm bringing forward the most appropriate reserve funds and accounts for the community and would recommend option A. You have any questions?
Do you have any questions? Any questions for Ms. Monteith, our CFO? No?
/ Director of Engineering and Operating Services.
My last job.
Yes, if you like.
I'll move that council approve option A to adopt District of Ucluelet Reserves and Surplus Policy number 5-1860-1 as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any notice of motions? One of these days. If you have that much spare time, huh? Okay, we have 2 correspondence items. One's from West Coast Multiplex. Obviously, Ms. Hackett's here wondering if we made any decisions regarding our MOU.
May I ask a question to you, Sam? I think you probably have to go to the thing though. So, thank you for this. You were asking for an MOU. So I'm looking on page the diagram of owner and partner.
Yes.
So there's an owner agreement and an operating agreement here. So are you saying that the West Coast Multiplex will build it, but then your partners will help fund that property? Is that what you're looking for for an MOU?
Do you mean the operating?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this doesn't change anything as far as what we've been talking about in planning and the referendum that's in place. It definitely doesn't. It's literally just putting it to a visual format. And we've never had the MOU be attached to any details. So we've signed 2 previous MOUs. The last one was 10 years ago with the 8 communities. But it's never had any details. So all the details that have been talked about over the last 20 years have always just been in trust or in sort of side conversations. So we're just wanting to sort of put it to bring the conversation together, that we have this referendum, we have all these discussions around what it's going to look like, but let's actually put it to the MOU so that as we go forward, and especially with the grants that we've been applying for and have applied for, if the money comes forward, or when the money comes forward, we don't want to be scrambling for what everyone's role and responsibilities are, and we didn't want any of the 8 communities to have any questions. Because what we sort of end up doing is having to just keep on re-educating as staff changeover happens, mayor and councils, chief and councils, and so putting it to sort of, this is what we've been talking about for 20 years, and especially more so in the last 10 years, here's what it looks like. So the first is, just the MOU, but that diagram that you're talking about is the visual format, just so that everybody's on the same page.
Okay. It's just that with the water infrastructure referendum that we're going for, all those other big projects, and a small little municipality, as much as we'd love to have everything, it honestly scares me when it says guarantees financial commitment.
Yes.
Because if we're at a point where our community is paying the nose for everything else that we need that hasn't been done for years and then all of a sudden we have this. So what is that? What does it look like as a...
That's the operating, and this document here, which is a really rough summary, but it's everything that the referendum has already been committed to, and then it's just, we've outlined sort of what that financially might look like for a resident, and it's not the capital. The capital is still, the society is still committed to fundraising, and with government grants and private donors, that's still the commitment. It's just the financial contribution of operating, which is through the ACRD referendum. So so far we have District of Tofino, District of Ucluelet, Area C, Tokwat Nation, and Ucluelet is just will be part of that operating deficit as well.
And do you know what that operating deficit would be? Is it on that piece of paper that I didn't grab?
It's okay. It is, and it's based on property values. So when the referendum was in 2012 was voted in favor for, there was a $450,000 operating deficit, and it was related to property values, whichever one was greater. Property values is now greater, so it's upwards of $650,000 a year is the allowable operating deficit. For phase 1, because we have a business plan for phase 1, we've been able to put it to specific numbers. So we're looking at, if you have a $500,000 property value, and per $500,000 of property value, a residential contribution would be $25 per year. Commercial would be $61 per year. We have now, as I had mentioned at the committee of the whole meeting, we have now plans to bring the pool into phase 1. Now that it's been 10 years since we've been talking about phasing it, we know that the 8 communities can now support financially a fully phased facility. And so we're working on the pool business plan, so we'll be able to update these numbers, what that looks like, but it will be doable in that operating deficit. And it's because of sort of all the things that we've looked at with the business plan. Once we have sponsorships, events, because of the multi-use, and then also there's a lot of grants available because of the First Nations partners that are at the table. 3 of the First Nations communities will not be able to be part of the referendum because they have not gone through treaty, but then they will be able to access grants to be able to subsidize one specifically of up to $200,000 per year to subsidize the operating. So our hope is that it's actually less than this, especially for an arena. We can get quite close to zero. A pool will be a little bit more, but
right. Okay, thanks, Sam.
Mr. Lawrence, do you have any comments?
I think if council would like to consider this, it might be ideal to refer it back to staff for consideration. There are a couple of points within the MOU itself that do pose questions that staff would like to consider, specifically the commit capital and operating funds toward the project as a component of the memorandum of understanding, and the other one is with respect to prioritizing grant applications as a primary one, as a commitment to the recreation or the multiplex over all other projects. So those two components do raise some concerns for staff, although it is a memorandum of understanding which doesn't formally commit the municipality to anything. It's saying that we'll work together towards these collective goals. But there are components within this that do raise a little bit of concern for staff and should be considered by council with respect to the operational and capital goals of the community and of council moving forward. And as was mentioned by Councillor Kemps, there's significant capital expenditures and operational costs that the municipality is going to be seeing. So I think council needs to give it due consideration and the impacts of this, and ensure that this the memorandum of understanding aligns with council's goals and criteria prior to executing the agreement. So either a direction from council to initiate the MOU, or maybe a report back to for council's consideration, and we can work with the proponent to seek additional clarification with those points, or deferring this until a later date.
What's the, I think I'd like to see a staff report regarding this West Coast Multiplex MOU request, and then we can have a fruitful conversation, because we've had Samantha come here a couple times. We all know about the referendum. There's ACRD, there's a bunch of different parties. So if you don't mind, I'll make a motion that asking staff to provide a report regarding the West Coast Multiplex MOU request.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thank you, Samantha, for sticking it out there this afternoon.
Yeah.
And moving on, information items. We have 7. Oh, I didn't think you wanted to talk about the letter, did you?
Oh, okay.
No, it was just correspondence. Okay, where are we at here? Anything regarding 12.1? Just our variance report for Q1 and 2. Okay. Moving on to 2. Just a purpose report regarding council with a monthly status update on resolutions that have been adopted by council. Any questions? Councillor McEwen, let me guess.
It's been on my wish list for almost 8 years.
Be patient, be patient.
The very first item, the lease with the Ucluelet and Area Historical Society. Just wondering where are we with that? It says it's in progress. Through the mayor to staff.
So through the mayor, I've recently received a letter from the Ucluelet Area Historical Society asking some questions regarding amphitrite in the area. So they have responded back to me, and so I'll be setting up a meeting with them shortly after Yuki Days.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted 12.4 Barclay Community Forest AGM update. I just wanted, Mr. Smith will be coming to August 19th meeting, and I just felt he did, at the AGM, he did list all the things they were doing. I thought it just articulated everything perfectly, and the things that you were doing, and yeah. So so at the end of the day, we were both the partners, ourselves and the Toquat, both received a dividend check to $367,000 each, and that brings the total payouts since 2018 to just over $8.5 million. So that's just a wonderful tribute to two communities working together. Community Forest, as I've said many times before, normally that funds would have went right back to the provincial coffers. So so this is just a wonderful thing that we've been able to see here for the last 4 years. So it's great, and giving future councils and community opportunities in the future. And I look forward to Mr. Smith's when he comes in and presents to us. And anything else regarding correspondence, or are we all good? Mayor's announcements and committee reports, starting with Councillor McEwen.
No, nothing to report.
Councillor Kemps.
I have nothing to report.
Councillor Hoare.
I have nothing to report because I missed the one meeting I had because my family was here. Fishing and catching things, by the way.
Councillor Cole, don't let me down.
I'm also going to say, aside from what you see in the around the region, I'm just going to say nothing to report.
Okay, good. Well, it is summertime, and myself, I think the big one, it's Yuki Days this weekend. It's been a couple years, and I know that Ms. Fortune and her staff are trying to pull things together this quickly this week, and it's good to see it's coming together. Fairgrounds and some telephone poles with flaggy things hanging from them. It's great to see. So it's and it's all starting on Friday at 5:30 down at the Village Green, which will have are you doing some barbecues down there? Yeah, salmon barbecue with vegan options. Perfect.
Gluten free.
5:30 that's starting, so everybody get out and have a safe weekend and drive if you can.
And learn to Bollywood dance because I noticed there's workshops all over.
Or ride your bicycle. What? It gets busy down there at the rec hall. Everybody wants to park.
So walk.
You said walk if you can. You said drive if you
Oh, I meant walk if you can.
Walk
Okay.
if you can.
Okay.
Wow. Active transport. Walk, take your scooter, use
Walk
your
or bike, okay? That's what I meant. Thank you. Drive if you can. Okay. There you go. I'm going red. I'm going red now. Okay, moving along. Question period. There's an opportunity for the public to ask questions and provide comments on items that have been addressed on today's agenda. Items not related to today's agenda will not be heard. Are there any questions from the audience?
I know. But I just realized I have a question. Because I think it should be said out loud. The pancake breakfast starts at what? 8 a.m.? And it's a fundraiser for Councillor Cole and the Cops for Cancer.
There you go.
Yes, thank you. If there's anybody out there that hasn't already volunteered, I do know we were in a bit of a volunteer crunch this year. We've had a couple of years with everybody at home and no Yuki Days and new people moving to the community, and it's an excellent opportunity for people who are digging their roots in here to come out and experience and partake in and be a part, because it really does take a community to celebrate a community. So please don't hesitate. If you don't think that there's something that you could contribute, I guarantee you there is. And the district would love for you to reach out to them. I would love, there's many things, many actual opportunities. There's going to be some Cops for Cancer fundraisers throughout the days, starting with that pancake breakfast. So yeah, if anybody hasn't made plans to contribute yet, I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Pancake breakfast. Are there any questions from the audience members? I don't think so. Are there any questions via Zoom or telephone?
Via Zoom.
And lastly, have we received any questions via email to communityinput@uqlet.ca?
None via email.
Thank you. You survived your first meeting after 6 months, so we are now adjourned.
Who's doing the pancake breakfast?